I do like to go back to the older consoles from time to time, but I never really thought I had a reason to get a PS3. Well, thanks to a friend of mine, I've had a change of heart, so here is my experience buying a PS3 for the very first time in 2024. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. So the first thing that you might be wondering is why now? Why did I decide to get a PS3 now when I don't seem to have been that interested in it before? So first of all, what I'll say is that back when the PS3 was originally available, I was very hard on the Xbox train. All my friends at school had an Xbox 360 and we all played games together like Call of Duty 4 and Halo 3. I don't actually remember knowing anybody who ever had a PS3 at that time, so there just wasn't really a reason for me to want one. Going into the later generations though, 8 and 9, I've definitely gotten more use out of the PlayStation consoles than the Xbox ones, and especially over the past couple of months I've played more PS5 than ever before thanks to the Portal. Check out that video if you're interested. So why PS3? Well, when I'd got the Spider-Man 2 Platinum, I was a little bit unsure what it was that I wanted to play next, and when this happens, sometimes in order to get a little bit of inspiration, I like to spy on my friends. By that what I mean is I look at things like the playtime on the Switch or on Steam, or I look at trophies on PlayStation to see what they've been enjoying, and maybe I'll find a new game to play that way. Now, one of my friends doesn't really have any modern consoles, but does have a pretty good PS3 collection, and when I was looking down his trophy list, there were quite a few PS3 titles that I fancy playing. So of course this led me down an internet rabbit hole, and I was soon discovering just how many games on PS3 I thought looked like fun that were still actually exclusive to PS3 even today. It's not like the Wii U situation where at this point almost every great game has come over to the Switch. There's a lot of games that you still can only play on a PlayStation 3. And so this is where it all started. A couple of weeks later, a shiny PlayStation 3 was delivered to my door. It's not new, of course, but I was pretty happy with the condition of the console, and it felt like a reasonable price to me, about £75. This is a PlayStation 3 Slim, and it seems to be one of the most widely available models, and that's kind of what makes it the cheapest. There are much more expensive models, so you can go after one of the original PS3 chunky versions that can also play PS2 discs, but they are 3 times the price. I still have my PS2 tucked away as well, and I also heard that the original PS3 model is the one that's most likely to have issues and might need upkeep. I don't really know how true this is, but they are the oldest, so it makes sense to me. So all of those reasons combined, that's why I went for the Slim. So first thing, I said that the console arrived in good condition, which is very true, but it did come with third-party peripherals. The power cable, it looks like it's from an old Skybox, and the controller is definitely third-party. Now the power cable, it wasn't really a huge deal for me because I've got a couple of PS4 cables lying around that I swapped out and they have worked fine, so I didn't even really try that Skybox cable. The third-party controller did feel more like a shame to me. Something is clearly broken inside, it rattles when you shake it. Again, I was going to swap this out for an old PS4 controller because I heard that they work with the PS3, but the PlayStation button doesn't work, so you can't back out of a game to the main console menu using a PS4 controller. The knockoff PlayStation 3 controller, well, it did work fine, but you know, after a few weeks I decided that I wanted to pick up an official controller so that I could do a comparison. Now you have to do your research with this, which I did. There are plenty of fakes out there. There's sellers claiming to have genuine controllers that are unopened and they're brand new, that kind of thing. There's a lot of ways to sort of get tripped up by this. I went through an eBay listing that was somebody selling refurbished controllers, so they sort of took them apart, cleaned them up a bit, and they claimed that they were genuine. It did have a guarantee, and you know, eBay does have that sort of buyer protection, so with it being in the price range that I expected, I felt pretty confident I was getting something official, and I decided to sort of take a risk, although it didn't feel like a huge risk. Now, when it arrived, this controller does feel a lot better to play with, mainly in those analog sticks. I think maybe the dead zones work a bit better or something like that, but it feels a lot easier to control movement and the camera with the official controller versus the third-party one. So, you know, if you're ever wondering whether it makes a difference, in my experience, it has made a difference to get one of these official controllers. There was one sort of unexpected thing that I encountered, which was that I actually couldn't get the official PlayStation 3 controller to charge. I got a single wire which came with the 3SP when it was delivered. I tried all the same plugs that were charging the knockoff controller, but none of these charged the official one. I didn't really know what was going on, and I found out that the official PS3 controllers will actually only charge from a console USB port because there's some kind of handshake that has to happen. It does work with some PC USBs apparently. Now, this is good and bad, so I sort of took this as a good sign that I did actually get a legitimate controller, but it does mean that charging is kind of awkward at the moment, so maybe eventually I'll buy a longer cable, but at the moment I just sort of have left the PlayStation on for an hour here or there to charge the controller. Now, I talked about how the main reason that I wanted to pick up a PS3 was for the games, so what have I bought, what have I been playing? First of all, I'm a big Ratchet & Clank fan. I've talked before on the channel about how I would play some of the PS2 games with my brother. I've since played the PS4 Ratchet & Clank Reboot and the PS5 Rift Apart, but it turns out there are a lot of games on PS3 that I had sort of no idea about and never got around to playing. I've started off with the Ratchet & Clank collection, so these are the original 3 PS2 games with a bit of an HD uplift, all bundled together nicely on one disc on PS3. The graphics actually weren't as terrible as I thought they would be. They look fine, and sure, the game is a little bit clunky compared to modern controls, but you get used to it. This game is the one that I noticed the biggest difference with when I switched over to the official DualShock. It really helped me feel like I was in control of the camera in Ratchet & Clank rather than it fighting me. There are plenty more Ratchet & Clank games for the PS3. I've picked up Q-Force just because I saw it in a second-hand shop, but I've not tried it out yet. I really love the Ratchet & Clank games. They're very clever, they're very funny, and I always have a great time with them, so I will be getting the full series that are on PS3 as time goes on. Next up, we're talking about God of War. This is a series that I've only really played the later games within the Norse mythology on the PS4 and PS5. So here I've picked up the HD collection, which includes God of War 1 and 2, and then later on I do plan to get other ones that release on PS3 like Chains of Olympus and Ghost of Sparta. I believe these were both PSP games originally, and they've sort of been ported over to PS3. There is also God of War 3, which came out on PS3 originally, but they have remastered that for PS4, so I'm not sure if there's any reason to get it on PS3 instead. A couple of other series like Infamous and Resistance, I've never played either of these. I played a little bit of Infamous Second Son, but I never played any of the PS3 versions. I don't know a lot about them. I've heard they're good, especially sort of as the series goes on, they seem to really pick up and get really popular. I have also got Metal Gear Solid 4, although I haven't tried that one yet, and there are a couple of other Metal Gear Solid games on PS4, I think like Peace Walker HD Edition, which might actually be on some other consoles, but definitely Metal Gear Solid 4 is a PS3 exclusive. There are other games on my list that I've been considering, but I haven't picked up yet. You know, there's the original Little Big Planet games, there's Jak and Daxter, Sly Cooper. I also got Red Dead Redemption 1. So I got the Game of the Year edition that includes Undead Nightmare. I never ever played Red Dead 1 before, even on Xbox. It came out, you know, sort of when I was big into the Xbox 360, but I never got it. And I know there was a port on the Switch now, but the PS3 version only cost me about £10, and it seemed like a good deal. That was the next point that I wanted to make, really. There's a big long list of games I've bought, even more that I'm interested in that I've talked about, and even more that I haven't mentioned at all in the video. You know, things like Armored Core, Heavenly Sword, there's plenty on there. So it sounds like it could have been a really expensive decision to buy a PS3 now, but actually it wasn't. I'm surprised by just how cheaply you can pick up some of these games secondhand. Sure, the collections, so like the Ratchet & Clank collection, the God of War collection, those are getting up to sort of normal game price, you know, £30-40, that kind of thing, and some of them like the Sly Cooper collection, that's gone insane, that's like £70 or £80. But then on the other hand, you know, Resistance 1 cost £1 from the secondhand shop, so you know, some of these games are really cheap. You could pick up a bunch of them without spending loads of money. Now, where games are starting to get expensive to buy the disc, you do also still have the option of the PlayStation Store. The PlayStation Store is the only one of sort of this generation of consoles that is still up and running. The Xbox Store's been shut down, the Wii and Wii U Store's been shut down, the 3DS Store has been shut down, the PS3 Store and the Vita Store are still going, but they're not up and running in their entirety. So you can purchase games from these stores, but you're not able to add a credit card onto the PS3 store. So if you want to buy something, you have to load funds up to the account another way, for example, on a more modern console, or maybe you can log into your account on a PC. I've not had a proper go buying a game on the store yet. I'm going to try and get as many games physically, you know, get the actual disc as possible, but eventually there are some games that I think I will end up buying digitally. There are some that it doesn't make any sense, so like that Sly Cooper collection, I'm sure that's probably going to be cheaper digitally. I think Armored Core is much cheaper digitally. And then there's games like Ratchet Gladiator, which I think is called Ratchet Deadlocked over in the US. That game is only on the store. You can't buy a physical copy of it. Now, I have also been reading that some games don't appear on the storefront anymore when you use the filters, but apparently you can find them still. If you know exactly which game you want, you can find them using the search. Some games at this point have been delisted due to licenses and things like that, but most games are still on the store for you to be able to pick up if you want to. So the PlayStation Store is still up, but what about other online features? Are they shut down, or does the PS3 still kind of act as basically a fully online console? Well, this is on a game-by-game basis really, and it depends on the developers. It depends on things like whether they hosted the servers and if they're still up, or maybe some games were peer-to-peer and so they're much more likely to be still up. Some games you will be able to get online. For example, I've heard the first Helldivers game still works really well online on PS3 and Vita. Games like GTA 4, apparently most of the Ubisoft games still work. Other games have been shut down completely and you won't be able to play online at all. And there are a few games that are sort of a bit in the middle, where online does work, but there are some drawbacks with it. So one example of these is the Call of Duty games. I really wanted to pick up the original Modern Warfare 2 for a bit of nostalgia. You know, this was one of the games that we used to play all the time. But Modern Warfare 2 has an issue with tracking your sort of level and your stats. And the way it works is if you originally picked up your PS3 before a certain date, I think it was sometime in 2017, 2018, if you originally played Modern Warfare 2 before that date, then your account works fine. You can play online today and everything will work as you would expect it to. However, if you're picking the game up and you're playing it for the first time now, or any time after that sort of date in 2017, 2018, then what happens is you can play absolutely fine, you'll level up okay, but once you shut down the game and you come back to it, all of your level up and stats and things like that will be reset back to level 1 again. Now, this seems to happen with some games, but not all. So apparently Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, that works fine. You can make a new account on there, and World at War works fine as well. But then on the other hand, Modern Warfare 3 has a similar issue to Modern Warfare 2, and some features of Modern Warfare 3 just don't work at all. So if you're planning to play a game on PlayStation 3 online, make sure to look up that specific game before you buy it. There are also some games where online works, but it's full of cheaters. That's what I've heard about Red Dead 1, for example, so you might want to avoid those. So it really is on a case-by-case basis. Some games you'll have a great time, some games it won't work so well. Now, talking of other online features, the PlayStation 3 does have a friends list and it does still work, but there is a little bit of a caveat in there when it comes to the modern generation of consoles. So you can see friends online who are playing on PS3 and PS4, but anyone who's moved over to PS5 will never show as online for you. What it shows is it shows last online X months ago, whenever it was that they last played one of the older consoles like PS3 or PS4. That's what I'm pretty sure that date lines up with. Basically, PS3 doesn't talk to PS5 at all. This includes your own trophy list, so when you're viewing your own trophy list on PS3, you can see your trophies for PS3 games and PS4 games, but you can't see any activity at all for your PlayStation 5 games. I have looked at this the other way, so if you're on PS5 and you've recently played a PS3 game, then when you're viewing your trophies on PS5, you can see the PS3 trophies. So it does work the other way, but basically the older console doesn't really see anything from the modern console. Just because we're talking about trophies, I'll add here that not all PS3 games even have trophies. It seems like the trophy system started up sometime during the PS3's life cycle, so some of the older games won't have them. Newer games are much more likely to, and some of the older games, they did get updates to add trophies in, but not all of them. So for example, I heard that Metal Gear Solid 4, it didn't have trophies to start with, but they got patched in later. But games like I think Resistance 1 is one of the games where it just never got trophies. I really like the trophy system in general. Even though I started on Xbox, I still prefer trophies to Xbox's gamer score, and of course the Switch doesn't really have any kind of achievement tracking at all. When I've been looking at games on PS3, I have been sort of keeping track of which ones have trophies and which ones don't. I'm always wondering what I might end up playing for my 3rd ever platinum trophy, but it's just something to look out for really. If you are a big trophy hunter, not all PlayStation 3 games will have this option available for you. So one final thing that I want to talk about is remote play. Given that I've been using the Portal a lot with my PS5 recently, I was actually really excited to see an option for remote play on the PS3 using a Vita. I've got a Vita lying around, it never really got that much use, but I thought, yeah, okay, this might be the time for the Vita to shine. I figured the quality wouldn't be as good as the PS5 streaming to Portal, but I figured if I used an Ethernet cable in the back of the PS3, I might get something pretty decent and playable. But it actually turns out that barely any games on the PS3 support this streaming function. God of War Collection works, but with games like the Ratchet and Clank collection, it just says that this remote play streaming is not available for this game. And when I looked it up, there's only really about 25 games in the entire library that actually support remote play, so it isn't really something you can get stuck into. Even when it did have the Ethernet cable plugged into the back, the connection still did drop out at times, so it's definitely nothing like the experience on the Portal streaming to the PS5. So overall, there are a few drawbacks and things that don't work so well when playing a PS3 in 2024, but considering that this is 2 generations old, I actually think it holds up pretty well, and I'm having a lot of fun digging into these old games. I'm having a really great time playing the original Ratchet and Clank at the moment, and you know, I'm looking forward to picking up new games for the very first time or replaying some of the old ones. Some of the mechanics and controls of these games, yes, sure, they can feel a little clunky to start with, and you know, some of the times the frame rate's a bit weird. The Red Dead Redemption frame rate on PS3 is a little bit choppy, but once you get into it, these things sort of fall away, and a lot of games I've been surprised with how the graphics still look pretty decent even though they're around 15 years old. It might be because I'm used to playing older games on Steam Deck, but it hasn't been bothering me really. I hope you enjoyed this video and maybe found it useful. If you're thinking about getting a PS3 for the first time this year, then maybe you've got a bit of a better idea of what to expect. On the other hand, if you are a bit of a veteran with this console, you've had it for a long time, then let us know what your favorite games are, and if you've got any tips for getting the most fun out of it that we can. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.